Thank you. I'm gonna just move that right there so when I get ready to use it, it's ready. Well, first, let me just thank you, Andrew, and Margie, and everybody here at the Amon Carter, just for choosing me, choosing my piece, and it's been an excellent, wonderful experience having to work here. I mean, I've been hearing all over. People are telling every time I turn around, I'm hearing about this piece up here, and it's just a wonderful, wonderful experience. Okay. Also, I want to thank Cheryl, and Kevin's not here, but Cheryl is here from Valley House. She is always so instrumental in helping along. I'm sure Andrew would agree. Valley House Gallery, they're just right there beside me, everything I do, in art. And so, thank you, Cheryl. And we're going to have a wonderful time today, y'all. We really are. Okay, so in talking about this piece, so some of the things that I'm constantly asked, and especially when it comes to quilt paintings, people want to know, what is that about, the quilts, what is it about it at its core? And the funny thing is, people have heard different responses from me, and they seem like they're different, but really, it's one of the first things I want to say, because it all sort of ties together. Like sometimes people are asked that, and I might say something like, oh, it's all about people. And then another time you might hear me say something like, oh, it's about anything. It's about whatever it can be. The quilt paintings can be about whatever you make them about. Well, the answer is that they're about all of that. Quilts connect to people. They are a people thing. The moment you think of quilts, I'm sure there's many of you in this audience have family members and stuff who have made quilts and done quilting. It's a very personal thing, and it's about the hand, and a handmade thing, and a thing of the heart, really. But many times in my paintings, I use them to express something, to talk about a subject of sorts. And so it is with this piece. A few things that maybe you should know. This piece first came to me in the most unique way. Usually my paintings, I don't know if I have another painting that have come to me like this one did. The idea first came from a dream. And maybe it's the only painting that did that. I had a dream, and y'all know how dreams are. They kind of weird, And so I was on the steps of a museum, and I was talking to someone. I don't know who it was. I stepped inside, and it was a church somehow. So, and that's why when I want to say it's weird. So it was a church somehow, and there was this. After a series of events, I saw this thing, and I approached it, and I looked at it more and more, and the thing is the best way I can describe it, but it was sitting there, and there was a spinning vortex. It was really spinning really fast, and it had 4 pieces to it. 1, 2, 3, 4. And the thing spent faster and faster and faster. And the faster it spent, it was like a floating image. And it was spinning, and the image was like made of light. Okay. That's hard to explain, but if you were looking at a hologram, something like that, and so it had 4 pieces to it, like the 4 quilts, and there was a spinning thing in the middle, and it spent faster and faster and faster until it burned out. And when it burned out, there was a cross, and the cross burned for a second, and I just stood there looking at it, and then it went out, and then that's when I woke up. But it burned such a strong image in my mind. I went to my sketchbook, and I wrote it, and I sketched it down, and I thought about it. And then it was years later, I decided to do this as a quilt piece. Okay. So the title of the piece, Hidden in Plain Sight. What is that about? What's hidden in plain sight? Okay. Let me do a couple of steps forward. First of all, many of my works, they have multiple meaning or layered meaning. And I think that's important because it allows the viewer to you know, see one thing, understand it from one angle, and then maybe on another occasion, look at it and understand it on another layer. And it allows the opportunity to have a face level meaning, but then have deeper meaning too. And the whole ideal is that they all sort of can line up and talk about the same thing. And literally, hopefully, before this conversation is over with, I can sort of give you an idea of what visual poetry is about. Okay. So there's a book out right now called Hidden in Plain View, and it has some more to the title. I forgot what it's called, but what it was literally about was historically when there was slavery in this country, and slaves were sort of those who were sort of out runaways who were seeking for freedom. They would, the idea was that people hung quilts out, and those quilts, people sewed things into them, and they put sort of messages into them that could guide the quilts on the road, on the pathway to the Underground Railroad. So they would run from one place to another, and the quilts would signal and tell them there was different things that were embedded in the quilt that would guide them on their road to freedom. And so that was the whole, there's sort of all of this debate out in this day and age. Did they really do that? You know, and there are symbols that they have in some quilts that were sewn in, and the debate was, did that really happen? Is that just you know, is that just a myth that came up, or did that really occur? And, you know, so there's all of this debate out about it, but this lady in this book, she was sort of concrete about all the symbolism that people used in their language and even in their quilt making. So for me, the thing I looked at that and I thought, well, I don't know, you know, how I would really have to dig deep into this to find out if that is definitely the truth or if it's not the truth. But the thing I knew is I thought, but that's a cool idea. I would really like to be able to do something like that with paintings. That's a very interesting thought, that they used these things and they had symbols and they had signs and they had a language, and they were able to encode it so that, you know, you would have to know some of those symbols to understand what was going on. And so people could see those things hanging out on the line and just think they were quilts drying, but at the same time, they had this message in them. And I thought, okay, well, so at some point, then I started to orchestrate the piece that you see, okay? Remembering the dream, thinking about these ideas, bringing all those ideas out together. Some background. Well, so the thought was, what if I could encode, have things encoded, messages encoded in a quilt painting, and what would be those messages? You know, though in that day and age, people were running. The runaways, they were running from captivity, seeking liberty. What would be the message? What would be the thing being said, and so on and so forth. So I thought about this thing. I put a lot of thought into it, and here are some of here's some of what came about. I thought about one of the things, and a little background here, I'm one of the Sunday school teachers at my church. So I wanted to put something about Christ in the picture. And I thought about, captivity that comes through a person's mindset, captivity that comes through, literally there's a scripture that speaks about Christ and that tells about him in terms of setting the captives free. And the captives he was talking about were captives that were under the power of Satan, or under the forces of evil, under the power of sin. And he talked about setting the captives free. And so I thought about, the mind. I thought about, if a person who's out for liberty, then they're on the road to some place. They're on the road to a place of liberation. I thought about that place of liberation. And I thought about Christ. And I thought, oh, okay, so when we put this thing all together, there's a couple of metaphors. One of them is a map. I thought about a map. And what if this thing behind me could sort of looks, and even quilts themselves, when you look at them, you turn them upright, they really look like maps. They have all of the squares. And so that's why I wanted my little thing here. I don't think I need to do a drawing to explain how quilts can kind of look like maps. But I do think if you were to look at some ancient cities, like Mayan cities, you would see that they're arranged in this way. Some of them, they're very centrical. They might have a road going through the center of town this way and a road going through town this way, and some of their other roads sort of all branch out from the center. And you would see all of these sort of like this. And you can kind of see that design slightly in something like this, okay? I thought about the human brain, right? And you all know how, the human brain here, it has these different lobes. And if you usually, if you look in books and look at diagrams, many times if they're trying to explain to you something, they might divide just right here to speak about the upper front left lobe and the bottom left lobe. But I thought about the human brain, right? And you can see that shape sort of suggested in there if you can. And some of you all might not be able to see that yet, but maybe you will. But there's a huge circle that is sort of suggested, through there. And so you can kind of see that there. You see that there. And so the idea is if I give you the title "Hidden in Plain Sight" and you start to search, what's hidden? Where and you know that it's sort of about this. That there are suggestions here, and the suggestions, and really the heart of the picture. The heart of the picture is going to lie where the canvases come together. Right? There's always something going on right here in the painting and right here in the painting where quilts are meeting at. And so through these types of metaphors and even symbolism, it's a sort of way of speaking about, I would say it like this: if that day and age, they were running from a certain captive, a certain slave master. This day and age, I don't want to. A person doesn't want to be caught by sin, by negative attributes, by things that lower our humanity, if you want to put it that way. And then the key to understanding the map is understand how all the canvases come together, because then that takes us to a place in which we have a different mindset. It takes us to a place in which we have an outlook on a different city. And literally in this piece, there is metaphors about, like, somewhat, if you look at this piece, you'll see that it's sort of jubilant. It's not a down sort of picture. And that jubilance sort of speaks about a marriage. And this quilt right here is literally a marriage quilt. If anybody knows quilting, you know the wedding quilts. It's literally a wedding quilt. There's a talk about a wedding. And the whole idea with the wedding is that that's the escape. The wedding has to do with the wedding, Christ and his church, the bride of Christ. Through that act of being married to him, then we go from this side, we go from sort of being captive to another side, which has to do with being royalty, being the bride of a king, being the basically you crossed over to another place. I've often thought to myself, sort of scientifically thinking, we got all this brain, and all the studies keep saying people don't use it all. You know, they say we only use a small matter of it. But I saw a study on, I think it was 2020 once. They studied people in prayer, and they monitored their brains. And what they could see in the monitoring it, when they went deep into prayer, that there was other activity going on in the brain that wasn't normally happening. And I thought, wow, isn't that interesting? And so, the whole thing, I guess, underlying message here had to do with maybe there's a liberation that can happen from a certain negative mindset to a mindset of liberty and freedom in Christ. And so it's really, I'm sort of being a preacher here. I probably got all kind of people in the audience there, but I'm kind of being a preacher here with the picture. And I'm preaching my thing, And I'm telling about this sort of liberty from that, being captive in that way to being free. And this is a road to that freedom. And that's what's hidden in plain sight. And the ideal is that if you get back and you look at this piece, you start to see there's stuff going on. You start to hear the music of the piece and get lost in the rhythms and the repetitions and all the stuff. And, I've often talked about jazz music with my pieces, and there's a musical analogy even with this piece. I love talking to, some of my friends, some of the musical friends, about hearing art. And literally, there's all of this language going on in here. Like I told you all, this was a wedding quilt, right? And it's blue. And all of these quilts are drastically different. Right? You see a blue quilt, you see the one with the high affect color on the top. You see there is something old, something really old, that one over on the top end left. Compared to all of these, this one was relatively new, the one on the top. Something borrowed, this came from Kevin, and then something blue. Something old, something new. Something borrowed, something blue. It's sort of a metaphor for the marriage, okay? And then, you have all of these circles that are speaking to the larger circle. Or you have, the 4 square pieces of the canvas that speak to, this piece having a square. So today I did an interesting thing. I just told you I was going to have fun. I've been doing all this talking. I brought a musician friend with me, and I wanted him to comment on the piece in terms of music, okay? So, I want you, you all don't know just how wonderful this thing is we have, because this friend that I brought is internationally known. His name is Dwayne Washington. He played with some of the best in the business. And And you know, I could go on and on with the list of people that he's played with and but he's going to give us something to kind of talk about some of what's being seen with all of the rhythms and the changes. But the main thing, one of the main things I want you all to know on that level is you got 1, 2, 3, 4. You got 1, 2, 3, 4. They're very different. Blue, this high effect color, the sort of the duller quilt on the top, the crazy quilt on the side, but there's something that connects them all. They're all connected in the center, and they're all connected by this rhythm that works itself through the whole thing. And I think maybe Dwayne can talk about that a little better in his language.